The stupidity of some of the things that are happening right now in Florida is frustrating. Today we're going to talk about hurricanes, storm surges, and sea level rise, and some of the stupid measures that are being taken in Florida that are not actually going to make a difference when these events happen, but it's just going to make investors feel like everything's right and safe. That's today's topic. Let's start off with the fact that the Army Corps of Engineers wants to build a storm surge wall to keep storm surge water from going through Wiggins Pass in North Naples, the place where I grew up, and I'm very familiar with the ecosystem of this area and everything that has to do with the water here. Now, I'm not an engineer, but I'm also not a complete idiot. And I can tell you that building a wall to keep water from going into Wiggins Pass is still not going to prevent water going over the barrier islands once you have a storm surge of over 8 feet. A real significant storm surge like what we had in Fort Myers Beach washed away bridges, roads, and entire chunks of freaking land and islands. And even other hurricanes have split islands in half like what we saw happen in Captiva. So what makes you think that just blocking the pass is going to keep the water from going over the barrier islands when you have a significant storm surge? This is aesthetics for investors because it's going to do absolutely nothing in the event of another catastrophic storm surge. But that's what Florida does. They put a band-aid on it that looks like it fixed it to keep the money and the investment coming in and the stupid, uninformed people from other states from buying in Florida. Are there entire cities to protect in Wiggins Pass? No, it's mostly $7 million houses that are empty most of the year because they're second homes. Who owns these homes? Politicians from Washington, D.C., and business owners that are absolutely loaded. If you told me you were going to build a wall behind the sea line from Marco Island to Naples to protect from storm surge flooding, even that would make more sense like they have in New Orleans. But to create a wall just to keep water from coming in through Wiggins Pass is absolutely insignificant. It will do absolutely nothing but destroy an area that is protected. 120,000 people a day have to drive around the Crew Swamp because it's a protected area. The Army Corps of Engineers hasn't offered a solution for them, but all of a sudden the rich people's houses by the water got flooded, 400 or 500 houses, and now that requires building a freaking wall in a beach that's protected. Not only are 300,000 hours every single day lost in Southwest Florida to extra added commute time because the Corkscrew Swamp is protected and they won't build across it, but doing that commute every single year, dozens of people lose their lives. What could be a 15 to 17 minute drive across the Corkscrew Swamp turns into an hour and 45-minute drive around it during the season time where people are wasting resources, time, and even their lives to commute to work. But we can't build a road or a bridge across the Corkscrew Swamp because it's a protected area. However, they did create firewalls in the Corkscrew Swamp, which flooded the city of Bonita Springs with Hurricane Irma. Yeah, you remember when Bonita Springs was underwater for a whole month after Hurricane Irma? That wasn't a natural event. That was because of the firewalls that the Florida South Water Management District built in the Crew Swamp that funneled the water from the swamps straight into the Imperial River, which before took place in a natural process because it was all swampland. We've had more rain with other hurricanes that did not flood Bonita Springs. The reason Bonita Springs flooded during Hurricane Irma was because of the firewalls that were created. What are these firewalls? They cost millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to basically cut down a 200-foot wide path across swampland, supposedly so that if there's a fire, it doesn't spread. Now, if we hadn't messed up the ecosystem to begin with, we wouldn't have to be creating these firewalls. And who destroyed the ecosystem? The same people who created the firewall. Everything in that area of Bonita Springs was Maliuca plants. They are non-native, but they absorb water at incredible rates, able to dry up entire swamps in no time. So what did the South Florida Water Management District do to eradicate these Maluka plants that were preventing the flooding? They injected them with Roundup and other chemicals, which probably are a leading cause of the red tide right after Hurricane Irma. So who's managing the ecological disaster in Florida? The same dang people that created it. Doesn't that just make perfect sense? And what's the maintenance of these canals and firewalls? Simple. Let's just spray semi-trucks full of Roundup into canals that are going to flush out into the Imperial River and into the Gulf of Mexico. That makes perfect sense with the red tide. I didn't read this in a magazine. I go fishing in these areas, and me and my fishing buddies just sat there and watched this disaster unfold in our eyes in our favorite fishing spots, wondering how the crap are these people engineers? But these engineers have all types of schooling and education. Yeah, like the one that came to my house in Naples, Florida, and didn't know how to use a freaking yardstick. I asked the lady, what is your title? I'm an engineer. I went to some type of Florida University thing, and I'm an engineer. I'm a civil engineer. And I'm like, and you don't know how to use a freaking yardstick? I had a low-hanging wire in my backyard. It had to be 12 feet. It was 8 foot. And the person that came out to measure it didn't know how to use a yardstick. But the state of Florida certified them as a freaking engineer. Sea level rise. Florida sinking. I lived for 21 years off of Wiggins Pass Road, 1 mile from the water. If I was going to plant a tree in my backyard and I dug a hole to plant the tree and it was high tide, there would be salt water in that hole in my backyard. If I dug a hole in my backyard, it would be tidal. I don't ever recall in any of those years me noticing that now the tide is higher in my backyard. But what are all those stupid people that are moving to Florida and know absolutely nothing about the environment or the state doing? Buying higher land because sea level rise is freaking real. Billions of dollars are being spent in the Florida real estate market completely speculating that sea level rise is real. I don't know if it's real or not, but I can tell you that in my 20 years in Wiggins Pass, the tide has always come to the same rock as it has in the whole entire time I was there. If it were to be a real thing, let's all of a sudden suppose sea level rise is real, we're talking 50 to 100 years to see a difference. I don't know if you guys know this, but in 20 years, Lehigh Acres went from being one of the worst places in Southwest Florida to be the fastest growing place in the freaking country. Some counties in Florida went from being the absolute most remote places to retire to being freaking cities in a matter of 15 years. Opelika went from being the worst place in the state to now being one of the nicest areas in a matter of 4 years. There's factors that will completely change the landscape of an investing area within a matter of a few years. Citrus County went from being one of the fastest growing counties in Florida with the best places to invest to being the highest overdose rate in the entire state in a matter of 2 to 3 years. Who would have thought that Opelika, Florida would go from being what it was many years ago to the beautiful area it is now, changing rapidly in a very short period of time? However, despite all these short-term changes that completely redefine the landscape of real estate, people are making their investments on fear and speculation of what could happen 50 to 100 years from now because some idiot thinks there's sea level rise. Guys, if this crap was real, I would have absolutely no problem telling you we're all going to drown. But it's not the case. I've literally lived by Wiggins Pass all this time, and at no point has anything been like, oh crap, now the water's a little bit higher, isn't it? No, it hasn't. And if you look at historical hurricane records, it's not the first time that we have a 14-foot storm surge in Fort Myers Beach. Punta Rasa already had a recorded modern history 14-foot storm surge. The 1928 Okeechobee hurricane created a storm surge on Lake Okeechobee. It's not even part of the ocean. The island of Puerto Rico is in the middle of the freaking Atlantic Ocean, and they get hit with way more powerful hurricanes way more often than we do. Don't see people not building in Puerto Rico because of that. But sea level rise is only happening in Florida. This isn't a global problem. I don't see people in other countries. I don't see people in Dubai concerned about that. No, this is a Florida problem. Well, the sea level is only going to rise in Florida. But that's the state you live in, where investors invest based off of fear and deception, and then they get their engineers to start building walls based off of these ideologies that are completely unfounded. All the while, we have some serious logistical problems in Southwest Florida related to infrastructure, and nothing gets done about that. They can't build an elevated highway to cross a corkscrew swamp to help hundreds of thousands of commuters every single day. That's not possible because it's a protected area. But now, once in 1,000 years, the rich people's houses get flooded, and we have to put up a freaking fortress on a protected beach. So protecting the properties of 450 rich people in Naples, Florida is apparently worth violating these unbreakable laws of not building anything in protective wildlife areas like freaking beaches. But no, the hundreds of thousands of commuters driving around the corkscrew swamp, that's not a problem at all. And that's the problem of Florida. 450 rich people on the beach are more important than 100,000 far inland. And look at what they're doing now, trying to get rid of the parks. I've been telling you guys for years. Now, I haven't said anything. I'm not going to say anything about the whole DeSantis versus Disney thing because that's almost a political issue. And our channel doesn't get into those topics. But if that doesn't highlight what I've been telling you guys for years, that in Florida, anything that's for the youth and for families, the government goes after and attacks it because they don't want families here. They want to have old retired people because they're able to control them and get them to do what they want. Young people with families are not going to tolerate the things that are happening in the state of Florida. People with families aren't coming to Florida because they know what's going on. And they're doing these things on purpose because they're trying to keep families out of the state of Florida. They don't want a young demographic in the state of Florida. Why they don't want it? Hey, you can figure that out yourself. We don't really mingle with politics on this channel, but it's very clear that Florida has a problem with younger demographics coming to the state. Let's talk about Disney World. Well, what about the Topgolf here in Fort Myers? They were trying to get that shut down. Remember they built a Topgolf in Fort Myers for the kids to play golf? No, they were trying to get rid of that. They said that the lights were too bright. Thousands of Topgolfs across America. The only one in the entire country that they've tried to shut down is the one in Fort Myers because the lights were too bright. Clearly, they don't want families in Florida. They don't want theme parks. They don't want amusement parks. They don't want Topgolfs. Anything that the young people can do to entertain themselves and their families, they don't want it here because the state of Florida is catering to a specific demographic, and it isn't families. They don't care about the schools. They don't care about entertainment. They don't care about anything that has to do with families. And if you look at the regulations that they've implemented in the state of Florida regarding things like activities, are you kidding me? They've actually over-regulated, for example, fishing to the point where a lot of people stopped engaging in a lot of the wildlife activities that you used to be able to do in Florida. Or if you do go fishing, then you're constantly being harassed by FWC because they want to make it unbearable. Anything that you do in Florida to recreate yourself, they go after it. And it's not just laws and regulations. If you're a young person, you go to the beach and do what young people do at the beach, namely play volleyball, throw football, or play music, immediately one of these old farts is going to get in your face and tell you you can't do that. I've literally been fishing on the beach in an area that's designated for fishing. All of a sudden, an old swimmer shows up and he wants to swim where? Exactly where I'm fishing. None of this stuff makes sense. It's not supposed to make sense because the state of Florida is not looking out of the interest of commuters, families, We're not what matters. It's the 450 houses that are on the beach in your county or city that get to determine everything that happens. Whether it makes sense or not, it doesn't matter. Sea level rise. Hey, like I said, I'm from Wiggins Pass. Been there for over 20 years. If I notice the water getting higher, I'll let you know. But it's people who've been here 3 years from New York who are investing their money thinking that this crap is real. And don't try to tell them any better because they know everything. I really hope that these idiots are not actually going to build this monstrosity of a storm surge wall and absolutely aesthetically destroy Wiggins Pass with a completely unnecessary structure that's only going to do is protect about 450 residential properties that belong to nothing more than rich people who are insured and can easily rebuild these properties. How messed up is the state of Florida? I'm going to ask you guys a question. Somebody has a brand new pickup truck on Fort Myers Beach, Florida. Their auto insurance is $73 a month. They had a 14-foot storm surge that grabbed their pickup truck and threw it into a canal 3 miles away. Do you think the insurance premiums went up in Fort Myers Beach? No. Do you know who pays $500 for car insurance in the same county? Somebody far inland in a normal working class neighborhood for that same pickup truck will pay up to $500 a month. You know why? Because it's in a high fraud neighborhood. You know who the high fraud neighborhood is? The people on the beach are a high fraud neighborhood because they had a 14-foot storm surge and they're paying $70 to insure that brand new pickup truck. The people far inland who didn't have their pickup truck washed away into a canal or a river, they're paying 5 times more for the same pickup truck to have it insured. Where's the high fraud at? Is it in Lehigh Acres or in Fort Myers Beach? In what logical world does it cost more money to insure a vehicle in Lehigh Acres than it does to insure it on Fort Myers Beach? If you don't believe me, call your insurance agency. Give them a Fort Myers Beach zip code and a Lehigh Acres zip code, and you'll see that the people in Lehigh Acres are going to pay at least twice more to insure the same vehicle. The rich people in Florida got this whole thing rigged up to benefit them. They're on Fort Myers Beach. Their car gets washed away by a freaking hurricane, and they're paying $70 a month to insure a pickup truck. Now, a commuter that has to drive from Lehigh to Naples, he's paying $500. Is his car going to get washed away by a hurricane with a 14-foot storm surge anytime soon? But that's the state of Florida, where rich people on the beach, whose car is going to get washed away by a 14-foot storm surge, are paying less for insurance than a working class person because in their neighborhood, there's a lot of insurance fraud. When I lived in Lehigh Acres, Florida, I was paying more for car insurance than I was for my car payment on a brand new vehicle. Now, I've been telling you guys for years that this state is rigged up to benefit the rich. And if you're a poor, middle class, working class person, you do not want to end up in the state of Florida. I've been saying this for years, but in the last little bit, the shamelessness of these people is no longer hidden or covert. This crap is wide open. They don't care anymore. They have absolutely no problem. There's no shame. There's no moral. They are openly, outright going after families and regular working class people, severely marginalizing the working class person, all the while granting themselves all the benefits. But I've been saying this for years on my channel. It's just how shameless, open. They have absolutely no problem going about this anymore in all types of fashions because their ultimate goal is to benefit themselves, enrich themselves, and screw over the rest of us. Well, there's no reason for me to say this anymore because you can see it every day how the poor people and working class people in Florida are marginalized while the rich and famous live spectacularly, getting all types of benefits in every way possible. They got their big fat checks 3 weeks after Hurricane Ian. The poor people that were also insured in places like the city of Fort Myers and Lehigh Acres and other more marginalized communities are still waiting for this help. Their checks from their insurance companies, their companies are defaulting. And now, because these companies default, the state of Florida wants to charge people a surplus on their taxes every year to subsidize these failed insurance companies. People's actual taxes, their property taxes, are going to go up, but the rich people got their checks along the beach 3 weeks after the hurricane. They bought a new Ferrari again. Oh, Ferrari got washed away. Let's just buy another one. They got their checks right away. But the regular people can't even get their properties insured. If they get them insured, a check doesn't show up in those poor marginalized communities. Disgusting is what it is. Guys, I grew up in Naples, Florida. There are currently 1,800 properties in Naples, Florida on the market for over $1 million. The amount of wealth in Naples is incredible. And while living in Naples, Florida, I never got ahead. The whole time we were there, we were working like animals and living in extreme poverty. While living in other places like Alabama, where you don't have that concentration of millionaires, I actually did so much better economically, which only goes to show that if you live in Florida, you have to have money. You have to have a lot of wealth, because if not, you're going to be marginalized from your insurance company to what you pay for housing. In every way possible, you're going to get the bad end of the deal. And what I don't understand is how making laws for people that are elderly and rich and just catering to what they want and need is going to make this a better state in the future, when the future isn't them. They're going to die in 5 or 6 years. And now people are retiring in their 40s and 50s, shamelessly loaded. So that means that moving forward, we're going to be even more marginalized. The state of Florida is a place that's being destroyed from within because of the greed and me first attitude of everybody coming here. And if you're trying to raise a family in this state, you're going to have a difficult time. While the state is being sold as a safe, clean place for retirement, the reality is that our overdose rates in the state of Florida are higher than California. I said the overdose rate in Florida is higher than California. That's a statistic. That's a fact. I don't know why people want to argue with me about this. Look it up yourself. More people are dying of overdoses in Florida than in California. I didn't make this up. It's a freaking statistic, bro. Addiction, overdoses, and crime are now happening in smaller suburban areas in Florida and rural communities much more than the cities. Now, Miami, Tampa, Orlando, all of the large cities actually have much lower overdose death rates. Take Miami, Florida. Their overdose rate is like 11 per 100,000, one of the lowest in the country. Compared to rural Citrus County, Florida, north of Tampa, their overdose rate is almost 8 times higher. Can you imagine that? People are dying 8 times more from overdoses in these rural Florida counties than they are in the urban cores. But if you ask somebody in one of these rural counties, Miami's horrible! I actually did a survey on my channel where we talked about asking our subscribers where they thought the most overdose death rates were in Florida. Everybody went on to blame Miami, Tampa, Orlando. They happen to be the lowest right now in the entire state of Florida, with the exception of a few rural counties outside of Tallahassee. Most of these other rural counties in South and Central Florida are completely out of control with their overdoses. But if you ask somebody there where the problem is, they tell you, oh, it's Miami. They got a huge problem in Miami. Oh, Miami's horrible. And then people that don't know any better hear that, they believe it, and they move their family from a nice, clean city like Miami into one of these drug-infested rural counties, only to find out that it ruins their lives and destroys their families because they believed the lie that other people were spreading. Like when I left Naples, Florida during the whole COVID thing, I believed that in Alabama I would have difficult economical prospects and better social aspects because the people were more down to earth. Turns out the complete opposite was true. I made so much money in Alabama. The people in those places like Alabama and Mississippi and Louisiana, they're not poor because they don't have opportunities. They're poor because they're lazy and uneducated. Just wrap your head around the idea that I made 3 to 4 times more money in rural Elmore County, Alabama than I did while living in Naples. But I ended up having to leave Alabama because the people were hateful, envious, and very racist. So it turns out that they weren't nice, friendly. We have Southern hospitality here. Really, you have Southern hospitality. Bless your heart. So you have to be very careful if you're moving to Florida or anywhere actually, because people are spreading these lies, possibly based off of their blind following of their politics. And you hear it, you believe it, you think it's true, and now you jeopardize the safety and future of your family because you believe somebody's political rhetoric, which you thought was just general information. Thankfully, I've had the opportunity now to travel, live in different type of communities, and experience different things so that I can help people with real information. The problem is a lot of times people don't want to hear it. You tell people the truth about what's really going on, and they don't want to hear it. Most likely they don't want to hear it because they're so ingrained in their political views that determines everything for them. People don't think for themselves. Their decisions are already pre-established. And that's really where you have to be careful if you're moving, to make sure that you're not listening to what's being put out in the media. It's freaking lies and it's freaking toxic. All right, guys, that is my personal opinion about what's going on in Florida right now. It's absolutely shameful and embarrassing how people just look out for themselves and just do whatever they want that benefits them, but with no care or interest to solve the state's real problems. Florida is now in the bottom 10% of places from an economical outlook. That means when you calculate all of your mathematical equations of your living costs, your income, and everything else, Florida is in the bottom 10% for earners. And if you were to eliminate the 1% of top earners in the state of Florida and just look at the 99%, the 99% in Alabama is actually better off economically than the 99% in Florida. It's only that 1% that makes so much money in Florida because of the tax shelters that makes the state look better than it actually is on paper. But that's only for them. If you break it down into the 99%, then you'll see that Florida is actually even more economically deprived than places like Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana. The difference is that places like that, people are lazy and they're complaining about how there's no opportunities. We got to get paid $18 an hour. They want to get paid more while working less. But here in the state of Florida, how us Cubans say, nos estamos comiendo un cable, that means we're eating a piece of cable, means we're not given any opportunity. So while we're working like animals and being exploited by the rich here in Florida, people in other states are complaining about their comfortable situations. Now, there's a few better off metropolitan areas, some parts of Tampa, some parts of Sarasota, some parts of Orlando. Crap is not gonna get easier, so it's better to just be smart, drive a car that's more economical, save some money, because things are not gonna get better. I guess the only option we really have in Florida, if we want to be safe, is to move into increasingly more expensive areas, because the poor communities are just designed to make you fail. They're completely marginalized economically, and it's a system that's designed to make these communities be held back. Because if Florida was thriving like the state of California, these people wouldn't be able to retire here. Why can't they retire in California by the beach and mountains? Because there's a youth there that owns, buys, works, and controls everything, and they're able to live good. You understand? They don't want Florida to become like California, where the youth are able to buy houses. Who's buying these houses, by the way? People are moving out of California. People are moving out of California. They're leaving California. What, do you realize that these people that are leaving California are buying properties not with what they sold their house for, with the equity that their property earned? Okay, that's skimming off the top. Who's buying these houses in California? Oh, when people leave Alabama and West Virginia, they board up the house and it goes to crap. That's not what's going on in California. Who's buying these houses? There's a youth in California. There's young people that are starting off their lives, and they're paying ridiculous amounts of money for these houses because that is a place where they're from and they want to be there and they're trying to make it happen. It's not like there's a wave of poor Californians moving here. It's a wave of people who got equity off their properties. In other words, they bought a house for $300,000 and they sold it for $1 million. They made $700,000 in equity. Who's buying these houses in California? Are they invisible ghosts of no? There's a real people that are buying these houses. Somebody's buying these houses in California before they leave. It's not like they're leaving the houses boarded up and abandoned in California. No, there's somebody in California that's paying top dollar for those properties. Somebody's wanting to live in California. And then there's the people that say, but there's a population decline. People are leaving. That's bad. Do you realize that Marco Island, Naples Park, Fort Myers Beach, Anna Maria Island, all of the most expensive and exclusive areas in Florida are actually losing population? But they're not losing population because people are moving out. They're losing population because these are now vacation renters, or there's less population density. Snowbirds, second homes. Population loss is not exactly a bad thing. And when you look at the things that California is exporting to other states, they're doing a great job of cleaning up their state. Have you seen the specimens that are leaving California? Have you seen these people? Yeah, that's what California is getting rid of. I wish we could get rid of those types of people here in Florida. We meet the Californians and New Yorkers here in Florida and we think, ugh, right? But if you go to California, that's not what Californians are like over there. They're pretty cool people. So it's interesting that what places export isn't exactly representing the vast majority of the people that you're going to find in these places. All right, guys. So everybody's welcome in Florida. Nobody owns Florida. I hate to see these comments. This person owns Florida. Nobody owns Florida. He owns my house? Who owns my house? Doesn't matter your age. Doesn't matter what state or country you're from. Everybody's welcome in Florida. Nobody owns the state of Florida. You own the property you buy with your own money. No, nobody owns Florida. Nobody controls or runs Florida. Each person individually runs their household. If you're rich, you can buy whatever house you want. And if you don't have any money, then find a nice homeless camp. I don't know what to tell you. But nobody runs or controls Florida. Each one of us individually runs their own program. Some people just get to set the rules. If you don't like the rules in one place, you go to another place and play by their rules. Like me, I'm a big, bulky dude. I would be a great football player. I'm not a good basketball player. I'm not tall, and I'm sure as crap not fast. So if I stepped on a basketball court, chances are I would lose. But if I were to step on a football field, I'm a more imposing athlete there. So you just got to find what type of athlete you are and what state offers your needs the best rules to play by, because every state's got different rules. Every state caters to different people and different things. Just make sure that if you're built like me for a football field, don't step onto a basketball court and think you're going to win. So gauge the rule book, gauge the field, and understand what type of state Florida is and if it's right or not for you, because every state has different rules, and some rules are great for some people and they're horrendous for others. Some states will give you Section 8, food stamps, public assistance, and they'll come and pat your back. Other states like Florida will take what you have from you and then come back and demand more. Can I transfer my Section 8 to Florida? That we don't play. That's not even part of the rule book here.